Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Michael's Record Collection, where we talk about great music with the people who make it and the people who love it. I have a very special guest for this episode. You know him from his incredible work in Dream Theater and Liquid Tension Experiment, but he's also performed with and appeared on albums by an unbelievable array of artists such as Deep Purple, Dixie Dregs, Annie Haslam, David Bowie, Prefab Sprout, Neil Morse, Steven Wilson, Arion, and many more. Please welcome Jordan Rudess. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, all is good. I've been very busy making lots of music, and now actually home and preparing for this tour with this band I can tell you about.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to talking to you about a new solo album coming out September 6th on Inside Out Music called Permission to Fly. I've been enjoying the tracks from that. I can't wait to get into that with you, but I want to start out like I usually do by asking you, what was your first favorite record, the first record that you really connected with and played to death?
Well, when I was a kid and my focus was on classical piano, my mom bought me a little turntable, which I had in my room. I remember it was a little blue portable turntable thing. And I was into I discovered the Beatles. And so it wasn't so much a full album. I was just listening to these little 45s. She Loves You, like
Yeah.
all the ones that came out. I had a whole drawer full of them and I loved it. But I didn't spend a lot of time listening to like rock music then. I was busy practicing the piano because I was a Juilliard kid and went there when I was 9. So that was really the focus. It wasn't until I was like around 17 or so that my high school friends started to try to you know distort my mind with rock and roll, and so they would bring me stuff, and actually the one that really changed my life, that I probably listened to more times than any other record ever, was Emerson Lake and Palmer's Tarkus album. And the reason that that struck me as it did was because the fact that a keyboard player could kind of wield such power blew my mind. I mean, the chords were really cool, and Keith Emerson certainly had a way of using all these cool suspended chords and just the right amount of maybe a little bit of jazzy stuff with power chords. But it was the power that came across, and I was like, oh my God. Like here I was, playing the piano, maybe playing some cool things as well, but I didn't know about the fact that that was okay. Like, that was even possible. Like, what kind of instruments? What is this? I listened to it over and over and over again, and just it definitely changed my life. But that really, along with some important other things like discovering Rick Wakeman and his Six Wives of Henry VIII, and kind of like, again, like, wow, keyboard player can do that. And then another really important one was discovering Patrick Moraz and things like what he did on the what's it called, sorry, Refugee album, the music he made with that group. I think they used to be The Nice, but they turned into Refugee. I don't know, there was a story there, but anyway, but Patrick was really great with the pitch wheel, and the fact that you could play a key and a keyboard and move the pitch like that, my life has never been the same. Yeah. So
What age were you, and was there an actual moment where you kind of figured out you had a knack for this instrument that was above and beyond what a lot of people had?
mm. Well, I started playing the piano when I was about 7. It started when I was in my second grade classroom, and I was banging on the piano there, and the teacher called up my mother and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that it's so nice to have Jordan playing the piano in the classroom. He sounds great." And my mother was like, "What are you talking about? We don't have a piano in our house." And she was like, "Well, you should get one because he's playing it." So, a week later, she brought a piano, and then she found one of these local teachers who would come around and just, spend a half an hour with you. And, they would literally come to the house in those days. My first teacher actually started to teach me that little red book that you start with when you play the piano, but he quickly threw it out because he realized I had a good ear. So he decided to show me all the chords instead, because he was kind of a jazz guy. So he showed me like the circle of fifths and how to put my hands on all the chords. And that was like amazing for me, because then I could just start playing songs and, you know, kind of was really interested in finding out all the ways to play every chord. So when my mother got wind that I was actually kind of like really talented, and especially when the teacher decided that he didn't want to charge for lessons anymore because he was just having too much fun, she thought, well, maybe it's time for him to go to a serious teacher. So at that point, through some family friends, we found this Hungarian woman whose name was Magda, who was determined to teach me and get me into Juilliard. So and that's what she did. And so then I started at 9. I went to Juilliard, and that was the whole focus.
Yeah. So you didn't have a piano in the house. So were your parents musical at all, or were you the first one to kind of pick up that talent and run?
Yeah, no, I was the first one to play music.
Wow.
Right. There actually was a piano in my grandparents' house, but I didn't even, it was like mixed in with the furniture. Like it was just that nobody played it. It was this old Chickering piano. I actually have upstairs in my house now, but I didn't even know about it. And I think one day my grandfather played like some, poking out one song on it or something. And as the story goes, my mother took lessons on it, but there was nobody playing music in my house. They didn't even really listen to music.
Wow.
Not even didn't even really. They didn't. There was nobody. There was no stereo system or anything like that in our house. My mother, although always told me, was very artistic. She loved to write poems and things like that. And she told me that when she was a teenager, she would go and like sit on the steps at these outdoor concerts. She didn't really have a lot of money, but she would go, and she loved listening to orchestras and stuff. And so she had a interest and a feeling about music. But I was the first one in my immediate family to be playing an instrument.
Gotcha. Let's skip ahead a little bit in your life and just briefly tell me, how you ended up in Liquid Tension Experiment and Dream Theater. What was the first meet? Did you first meet John Petrucci? Was it Mike? Was it both of them?
Oh, well, I that's a really long story, but basically what happened was in my path of life, uh, I had a period of time where I was working as a quote unquote product specialist for different synthesizer companies. And we were at one of these NAMM shows, where they show off all the new musical instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing something for Korg. I was showing off an instrument called the Wave Station, very cool instrument. And my wife was at the show as well. And she somehow had the inspiration to try to get Jan Hammer to come and see me doing my presentation. So she went up to him and said, "Oh, you have to check this out, this new instrument, blah, blah, blah," whatever she said. She got him into the room. And I'll try to make the story as short as possible because a lot of elements. But so Jan checked it out. And then eventually I was working at Korg, but he managed to get through to me because he wanted to have me play with his band, with Tony Williams, the legendary drummer from Miles Davis.
Mm-hmm.
So he finally got through to me after a while. We worked together. And his manager, Elliot Sears, had gotten a call from the Dream Theater people. I think about probably having Jan Hammer be part of the Dream Theater space, but yeah, but Elliot was like, no, 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 he can't do that. But there's this guy Jordan Rudess, and so a lot of things happened. Number one was Kevin. Another one was that Kevin Moore, the original keyboard player, had mentioned me to them at some point, just as being another great keyboard player. And also, I was in Keyboard Magazine as the best new talent that particular year. So they noticed me on this. So a lot of things kind of came together to where they invited me to come and audition for them, right? And so I went and I auditioned for them, and I got along really well with them, but I ended up not taking the gig and actually going on the road with the Dixie Dregs and keeping all the things going that I had going at home, like my job with these synthesizer companies, doing the Dregs. And after I didn't take the job with them, I did this one show that people can see. It's online. It's called the Foundations Forum. They search Rudess Foundations Forum Dream Theater. You'll see it. I did one show because they really needed somebody to help them with this show. It was after the Awake album. They needed somebody to fill in. I did that. Then I said no to the tour and joining, at which point they got Derek Sherinian. But then a little bit after that, I got a call from a manager guy asking me if I wanted to join Mike Portnoy's supergroup. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So so I thought, I don't even know what a supergroup is or what that means, but sure, let's check it out because it was going to be a side project, for everybody. So I did that, and that was Liquid Tension Experiment. So and Liquid Tension Experiment, the first and second album we did together were some of the most popular rock instrumental albums ever. So, and not only that, after the second one, we had a great time doing it. And I was really connected with Mike and John now, even though I didn't join Dream Theater. But they approached me again after that second album. We were getting ready to close up and go home and be done recording. And they said, I remember Mike said to me, hypothetically speaking, if we were to ask you again if you wanted to join Dream Theater now, what would you say? And I was like, well, a lot has changed, and I think it would be cool. Let's do it. So that was, probably like 1998, but by 1999, we were in the studio and made Scenes from a Memory. So that was the start of this whole chapter, about 6 years ago, almost at this point.
Quarter of a century later, you're still with Dream Theater. So that's
right.
And Mike's back in the band again.
And there you go, right? It's full circle.
Full circle. One more thing I wanted to ask you about before we get into your solo album is I was curious how you ended up on David Bowie's Heathen album.
Oh, yeah. So I was in the studio working on 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. I got a call from my friend at that point, Tony Visconti, who was getting ready to work with David Bowie.
Yep.
David had expressed, and Tony, I think, wanted to try a slightly different direction than what they had done before. So Tony and I worked together on the Prefab Sprout and Annie Haslam stuff. He had a studio somewhere, even in my neck of the woods, and we would go there and work together. So yeah, he asked me, and I was like, wow. Reality was I was never a huge David Bowie fan. I mean, obviously, like everybody else, I knew who he was very well, but there's not something that I ever listened to that much. But I was excited because, when I did listen to his music, I liked it, and I was given this opportunity. And I remember I was really into Kurzweil synthesizers in those days, and I had these, what they call Kurzweil rack synthesizers, and I had 3 of them. And one was for like orchestral sounds, one was sort of vintage, like keyboard sounds, and one I had programmed to do all kinds of special effects. And I brought them into the studio with David Bowie. I was going to be there, living there for like 14 days up on the top of a mountain in the Catskills in New York. I think it was called Skyline Studios, I think. Anyway, I got there, I set it all up. I thought, man, I'm going to change David Bowie's life. I've got every sound here. We can do the next evolution of Bowie. I was going to help design that. Well, I set everything up, and then Tony comes over. He says, okay, we're going to get started. I said, well, what do you want? I said, I've got this incredible system here. I can do anything. He was like, yeah, we're going to do a Hammond organ track. I said, oh, great. I've got about 30 Hammond sounds on this module here. He's like, no. So we got a Hammond over there in the corner. You'll play that. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And I remember whispering to him, I said, you know what, Tony? I said, I'm a classical pianist turned synthesist. I did the Hammond thing. I don't think I know how to turn it on. Like, it's not that was not, something I did.
Yeah.
So he was like, don't worry, we'll turn it up. We'll turn it on and just pull out some of the drawbars, and it'll be great. So that's what I did. So anyway, that's how I met David Bowie. It was an interesting 14 days, and we did that album. And for anybody who wants to check it out, but the favorite thing that I did on that album is a song called Slip Away. It's a really classic Bowie, and it features me at the piano. And I'm going to tell the story as quickly as I can because it's really funny. They had two pianos. One was an upright piano. One was a grand piano, a nice baby grand piano, and kind of a funny looking upright with the lid pulled off. I walked in the morning, and there was this guy sitting at the upright tuning it, and I was thinking, well, that's interesting because if I played the piano, I would probably play the what I thought was the better piano. But when I went in, they said, yeah, today's piano day, and we're going to have you play the upright because it's being tuned with David's favorite tuning. I thought, okay, cool. So I went in and I started playing this track on the upright piano, and they came in and said, you know what? It's not working. It just doesn't sound right. You're playing fine, but it doesn't sound right. Try playing the grand piano. No, okay, that'll sound better. Played that. Both of them came in. No, not sounding like what we want. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? So they ended up pushing the upright piano up really close to the grand piano and taping down the sustain pedal on the piano so all the strings would ring, and said, okay, play the grand piano. We're going to put mics up to the strings of the upright, and we'll record it that way. And they were saying that was an old Brian Eno trick. So after we did that, they were like, this is the sound. This is it. This is the cool sound. I was like, hey, whatever rocks your boat, man. Great. Do it. But the song turned out really nicely. It's definitely worth hearing for anybody who wants to check it out.
I agree. I'm glad you brought that one up because that's my favorite one on the album. So I'm
oh, cool. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Great.
And yeah. Brian Eno, of course, he had a lot of good ideas in the studio over the years.
Oh yeah, he certainly did. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about NAMM and working for Korg, and you've always been on the cutting edge of technology. I'm curious, before we launch into the album, what is your take on AI's place in the creative side of music?
Yeah, it's a huge topic these days. It's very heated, especially with creatives, because they feel like, they're going to maybe lose their jobs, or it's not coming from a human being. So, get rid of it. And people are like, really, a lot of people are almost like hostile about it. But as a technologist and as somebody who's always working with technology since my first time touching a synthesizer, to me, it's the next level tool. And it's like any other tool. How are we going to use it? You have drum machines. A drum machine you can go over and turn on and press pattern 1 and just play. And people do that. And is that okay? Like the drum part is like automatic. Like some people are fine with it. Other people are like, oh, a drum machine, turn that off, But it's become very widely accepted. But then again, further than that, we have sequencers, right? We have arpeggiators on synthesizers. Hey, think about that. You go over to a synthesizer, you put your hand down on a chord, you go bing, and all of a sudden it's going like Jordan Rudess playing the keyboard. It sounds like, but it's not. It's a thing. It's a arpeggiator. My point is that all of these tools are valid, and it depends how you use them. With AI, we're at such an interesting point because the AI is getting very powerful very quickly, and you have tools even now that you can go over and say, create a song all about my friend John, or actually better yet, I'll create a song today about my friend Michael, who does interviews, and make it funny and have different artist names and make it clever as well, all about what he does, on his program. Go, make it a rock song, go. And then all of a sudden you have this full song and you're going, holy shit, like, how did this even happen? Like, this technology is nuts. On the other hand, you're thinking, wow, what does that mean to like musicians and what's going on? So, and from my point of view, I am a musician, a fellow musician to all my friends who create music, and I am very sensitive to all the way the way people feel. My interest is it's how can we use this technology to further our human experience? How can I make this so it makes me feel more creative? It educates me. It heightens who I am. I don't care about going over and hitting a button. That does nothing for me. Maybe when I hit the button, and it created something that I'm listening to, and all of a sudden I'm getting incredible joy from it, that I might care about. That makes me go, wow. Or if my brother is in the room, who's a real estate guy, and I tell him about this, and he types in some words in a prompt and does some things and creates a really funny song about whatever, and gives him a great feeling, or makes a friend of his really smile, or I think that that's great. Putting I'm all for putting more music into the world and allowing people to feel the joy of music, however you do it. The other side of it is that, okay, this technology exists. How can we use it to our real advantage? How can it become something that is both more entertaining, has more value to each of us? Typing in a prompt, fine. It's very surfacey, though. There's not a whole lot to that. So, as an example, I'm I've got a residency at MIT that I've been doing, kind of like an artist in residence type of thing, where they have the media labs, and that's like the home of AI. And it's something I've been involved with for the last months. And in September, we have a showing of the AI music technology that we are developing. So I get to explore my interests directly, with them, and create something that really has meaning to me, and maybe push the technology in a place which is going to be more meaningful to everybody else as well. So what I'm doing is I'm working with an AI technology that generates music, much like what I was just talking about, but it also responds to real-time input. What I mean by that is, like, I'm sitting at a keyboard, it starts to generate something, right? But then I play another chord, right? And it goes, oh, he played that chord. So now I can do this based on that. And then as it's doing that, I do something else. And it goes, oh, okay. So then, and maybe I hear something from the AI that I react to. So, and the cool part about it is that the training that it has, you've heard all these arguments about people using copywritten music, and, Universal is suing Udio, and everybody's all up in arms. In this case, all the training is directly from me. I train all the models with my own data, because I'm an improviser. So I'll sit at my keyboard, like later this afternoon, I'm going to go play a bunch of stuff just off the top of my head into this, and send it to my programmer, and we'll put it in the model to help build this technology. And so my whole goal with it all is, hey, this thing is awesome. This is really fun. Let's make the most of it. Let's use it in the most positive direction we can, and see how this technology can make things more fun, more educational, make it cooler. The final thing I'll say about it is, I say all of that with an awareness of, AI, and everything everybody's worried about. I don't take it lightly. I'm glad people are worried about all these things, because technology, computers in general, in the wrong hands, can have scary negative impacts. So it's up to some people to say, hey, these are cool tools. Let's try to use them in a cool way, because they're not going away.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely interested in getting your take, because as someone who, I'm a writer, so there's a lot of that going on in my field as well. So,
Right, of course.
but yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Permission to Fly. It comes out September 6th on Inside Out Music, and this is a record that I think, for me, I really enjoy this among your solo work, because to me it feels like a band album. It feels more cohesive. There's not like on something like The Road Home, for example, where you
Yeah.
have Kip Winger, and you have Neil Morse, and you have Steven Wilson. You have one
Yeah.
singer. You primarily have one guitar player. You have another guitar player comes in, does some solos. You have a drummer. It feels like a band. Was that an important part of undertaking this record for you?
It was. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I put a lot of thought into it, a lot of discussions among, with my wife, and with my daughter, who wrote the words, and with my immediate, friends about it, and with, like, Thomas from Inside Out, about how can we do something that will be meaningful to me, but also be something that can be kind of like something that we can carry through with. Like, keep going. Like, my plan is to do more, with these guys, right? Because we kind of set it up like this is like a band, and it comes off that way as well. And I think it really, really works. Um, so I really wanted to do that. It was very, very intentional to make that happen, and to find a vocalist, for example, and a drummer and a guitar player that could really be part of my core musical message, and that I would feel really comfortable with expressing, the music. Maybe especially you could think about like the vocals, like, what I've been kind of saying and feeling all along was that, I want to have an album that has a lot of vocals on it this time. I want it to be like a band thing. But you know how singers are. Like, one guy will listen to like Ian Anderson, and they'll be like, "Oh man, he's got the coolest voice." Another guy will be like, "I don't get that at all." Like John Anderson, like, I'm the biggest fan of John Anderson. Somebody else is like, "Well, he doesn't sound. That's not a cool voice."
Yeah.
So the voice thing, that's a big topic, right?
Yeah.
So because I'm writing all this music, putting out an album, Jordan Rudess album, what is the voice? What is the personality, the sound of this voice that I'm going to put out there with my music? Took a lot of thought. It wasn't until I spoke to Roy at Prog Report, and he mentioned Joe Payne, who goes by the name of that Joe Payne, and told me he was from a band called the Enid that I had never heard of, but whatever. Then my world changed, because I listened to Joe and I thought, this guy's got a beautiful voice. Oh my God, this is great. So I remember Roy arranged a phone call, and I think that Joe was under the impression that the phone call was set up to find out, or to talk to me about if I could play on his solo album. But it was already too late, really, for that when we had that talk. He didn't know anything about my solo album. Anyway, eventually it turned around, and I said, "Hey, Joe, like, do you want to sing on my solo album?" He was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's do it." So, super nice, super capable, great, beautiful musical voice. Uh, Not the kind of person that I would have to sit there and hold his hand while he made musical decisions. Or, I sent him the melodies that I wrote, and he was like, "Oh, well, how about this? If I did this," and he would send back these amazing vocal arrangements, like, instead of just like block harmonies, like maybe I would have put out there, like singing thirds here, six here. Joe came back with some really interesting vocal oriented ideas, and I was like, "This is great," because it like adds another element. You're putting things on this album that I would not. That's your talent. That's the whole thing. And I felt like, wow, great. It's like a band. It's expanding my world and creating a different sound. So that was amazing. And then of course I enlisted Darby Todd, who I became very tight with when we went out and toured with the Dream Sonic Tour, which is the Dream Theater and Devin Townsend
Mhm.
and Animals as Leaders tour. Um, and when it comes to drummers, it's tricky because sometimes drummers see me coming and they'll run away because the music is hard, and everybody only has so much time in the day. So for me to find somebody who's really great that I want to play on the album, that wants to brave it and spend the time to do it right, there's a challenge there. But Darby was like, "Bring it on, man. This is what I do. You want to play in 21/16 time? I'm game. Make it happen." So he did. He was amazing. I sent him, he asked me to put down some scratch drums, just so, banging on the keyboard on some drum sounds, just so he would know where I feel the accents. And I did that for him. And then when he sent me back the stuff, I didn't have that much to say. Like, the guy really, really understood my style. It's a couple things like, "Hey man, do you think maybe you could just change that measure to throw another option at me, or this or that?" He was amazing, fantastic. And then I work with this guy, friend of mine, whose name is Steve Judean, who is an electric guitar player, as well as being a very accomplished classical guitarist, and interestingly enough, as well as being a dentist. He's like one of these guys that does everything he touches, he does really, really well. And he's a good friend of mine. So one day we're in the studio, I was showing him we were talking about the guitar sounds that I was playing on the album because I was playing on my keyboard because I got every sound in the world, a full palette of sounds. And, so why not? I'm playing the strings, the brass, the choirs, the organs, the pianos, the whatever, all from my keyboard. But to me, it's like, I'll play the guitar sound too. So Steve was like, you know what? Let me have one of the tracks. I'll take it. I'll go to where you put down your keyboard guitar stuff and let me play the guitar on it. I was like, sure, try it. I'll check it out. He did it and it came back so well. I was like, oh my God, man, this is great. And so he was like, just give me whatever you want. I'll do the whole album if you want. I'll go back and replace or add whatever. I was like, yeah, could do it. Okay. So Steve totally came through, did an amazing job. And then the other player that I had on the album as a guest was Bastian Martinez, who is a young Chilean guitar player, a real phenomenon. People are starting to really notice him. He's like, a lot of guys playing guitar on Instagram or whatever.
Mhm.
When this guy plays, there's something really special, going on. So I enlisted him. He actually played on Embers, which was the first song that I released
Mhm.
through a very interesting technology called Moises. And he also played on Into the Lair. And finally, I will say that I played two guitar solos on the album as well. The guitar has been a serious hobby for me over the last few years. And I had my guitar out there. I didn't really know how to record the guitar yet because I was always working with MIDI, but I thought, let me just try to do something, So I did that. Matter of fact, the last song that was released that's out, you can see it on YouTube now. It's called The Alchemist. There's a guitar solo that I did. I was feeling a little shy. I didn't play it on the video, but you can hear it there. It's on there.
Right. Yeah, I have to say I was listening to Into the Lair, and before I'd read the notes that came with the tracks, and I thought, is that John Petrucci playing that solo? And I
A
had to go
really
look. And
burning
Bastian
solo.
does a just tremendous solo on that record. And
Tremendous.
I wasn't familiar with Joe Payne, but he has a lot of range to his voice. He can put some power there. He can be very delicate at times, and all of that is needed on this record. I want to talk to you a little bit about the lyrics. Ariana, your daughter, wrote the lyrics to this record. Did you discuss potential topics with her beforehand, or did you just say, "Here's the music, go"?
Good, good topic. So, Ari is her nickname, but I told her that because we called her Ariana at birth, she should use that as the lyricist, the official name for the album. So, but I'll refer to her as Ari now. So Ari has been, with me on this journey since the day she was born. There's pictures of her on my lap as I'm playing the piano. I'm training her with odd meters as she's going to kindergarten. Um, Nobody knows me like musically as well as she does. And then in her path of life, she went on to become a linguist. And in college, she basically has a degree in English and she speaks Italian and she speaks French and she's extremely creative. And when it came time to write the lyrics for this album, and of course I needed to because I wanted it to be vocal, I thought, well, I could write them, but where am I coming from? I'm more interested in how the words sound and just the general. I like spacey, floaty, trippy things, and that's what I'm going to write about. But I thought, you know what? On this album, let's go a little bit deeper. Let's do it in a different way. So I asked Ari if she wanted to tackle writing words for this album, knowing that she is a great writer and could really come up with some serious stuff. So that's what happened. I mean, she knows me, so she knows the kind of spirit that I like. I like talking about the universe and spiritual things and all this stuff. So she obviously took that into consideration, but she wrote some really deep stories. And I told her, people are going to ask me about these lyrics on this album. I need to know, like, what is all this stuff about? So she's like, yeah, well, she wrote me a summary, which I think probably got sent out to everybody about what it's about. Um, but the general idea was that she presented to me was like, look, these lyrics are about this world that we live in. It's not all about the spacey trippy stuff. It's about there's violence, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, but there's also all this positive stuff. And she wanted to write lyrics that kind of in her stories that dealt with the balance of that. And that's where she's coming from with the lyrics.
Yeah. What was the first thing you wrote for this record? Do you remember?
The first thing I wrote, it was Embers. It was Embers because I was talking to my friends at Moises, who I'm an ambassador for, and we wanted to come up. They wanted to come up with a contest where they could put out a song with an artist, in this case me, where we could open it up and let people. Moises basically does track separation. So, in other words, what you do is you can upload an audio file, and then when it comes back to you from their system, it separates it. So all of a sudden you have access to separate vocals, separate drums, separate bass, guitar, anything like that. So we wanted to have a contest so somebody could pull out a track and then put their own track in there. So I wanted to write something that was not that complicated. That was something that, because people were going to be trying to do their own tracks. I realized after I wrote it, though, that there's a lot of chord changes in that song. And it's not that easy, but it's also not like in 13/8 time. I think it's pretty much in 4/4. But sometimes I can't help myself from adding little whatever it is.
You got to be you.
I got to be me. So that was the first thing I wrote. And I knew I wanted to have a really cool guitar solo in it. And that's why I reached out to Bastian Martinez about that, to do that. So that was the first one.
All right. Well, I want to be very respectful of your time because I know you have more of these today. So one thing I have to ask you, by making this a band album, does that mean there might be a possibility of some live shows and maybe even I'm sure something Inside Out would be interested in maybe a live DVD and live album in the future?
Yeah. Well, at this point, I'm preparing for a very massive Dream Theater tour, which have rehearsals in September, and then we're going to hit the road in October, and it's going to take at least a year, and there's nothing else that's going to happen in that time, really. So as far as my band that I assembled, what I'm thinking about, and of course nothing is determined, I haven't even spoke to the other musicians about it yet, is I'd love to do this again. This would be amazing. Like when there's time again as my next, one of the reasons I did this actually was with the plan of forming like a band kind of thing that I could, introduce to people now, and then they could expect, oh, I like that. And then there's something else. So that's my general plan of attack. And when we do another one, then it'll be a cool time to think about and look and see if there's a possibility of going out live. We'll see what the state of the world is and what's going on,
All right. Well, the album is called Permission to Fly. I could ask you a million questions, but I'm sure you have other things to do today. It's on Inside Out, September 6th. 9 tracks. It's going to be a couple of bonus tracks. It's a CD digipack and a gatefold 2 LP vinyl set. You can find out more on jordanrudess.com. It's Jordan Rudess Official on Facebook and at JC Rudess on Twitter and Instagram. Jordan, thank you so much for your time today. I've appreciate it and appreciate hearing all about this record and about your past. Love to have you back on to talk some more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure. Nice to see you, and I appreciate your energy and support with everything.